In this video, I will talk about evaluating tests on the statistical level. This is going to be a quick overview of this procedure. For further information, refer to the corresponding chapter on our platform. I am recording this video because you will be required to carry out some basic statistical analysis as part of the report in which you refer to the results obtained by the students in the test that you're going to administer. Before we get into the topic, I would like to talk about the organization of items on a test. So you should follow one or both of these principles. You may go from simple to complex, that's easy, to difficult, or from the most practical to the least practical items. For example, let's imagine you want to include a listening item on a written test. So the most practical thing to do would be to place it at the beginning. So all students start with the listening comprehension item first. If you place it elsewhere, it's going to be very complicated and distracting for your students, because you may need to wait for all of them to finish so you can play the recording, or tell them to stop what they're doing in order to take the listening comprehension item. That's probably counterproductive. We need to review key concepts. So all tests should ideally be valid, reliable, and practical. And we have a note here. A test may be reliable and practical and still not be valid. So valid means that the test is testing what it is supposed to be testing. For example, you cannot test critical thinking with multiple choice, or you may not be able to test oral production in written form. A test is reliable when it produces consistent results. For example, you have to give the same test to two groups, and when you grade the test and analyze the results, you see that approximately the same number of students got 9s, 8s, 7s, and so we can say the test is reliable as a measurement instrument. If a test is practical, it means that it's easy to give and easy to take. So as you can see, the most important concept here, or condition, is validity, or a test being valid. Now we'll look at steps for analyzing objective items. So once your students have taken the test, you will take the completed test and group them as evenly as possible in terms of the grade. So you can have a high, medium, low grade, so you go from high to low, low to high. And then you take the low and high groups and put the medium group aside. Then you start tallying the answers given by the students per item and per performance group. Finally, you work out the corresponding statistics. So, how do we obtain the difficulty level? For any given objective item, add the number of high students who got the right answer plus the number of low students who got the right answer. Then divide that by the total number of students in the high and low groups. We will see an example. So let's pretend we have a group of 30 students. So we divided the test into three groups, 10, 10, and 10. So we get rid of the medium group and stay with the high and low groups. So that makes up 20 students. So let's pretend that in the high group, only 7 students got the right answer to question 1, and only 4 in the low group. So you add 7 plus 4, divide that by 20, that equals 0.55, that becomes 55%. And we have a note. Generally, if more than 90% of the students get the right answer, an item is considered very easy. And if less than 30% of the students get it right, the item is considered very difficult. Now we'll look at how to obtain the discrimination level. Similar to the previous formula, for any given objective item, subtract the number of low students who got the right answer from the number of high students who got the right answer. Then divide that by the total number of students in both the high and low groups. We'll see an example. So once more, we have a group of 30 students, so we divide that into 3 and get rid of the medium group and stay with 20 students, 10 for the high and 10 for the low group. Let's pretend that 6 students in the high group got the right answer and only 2 from the low group. So we subtract 2 from 6, divide that by 20, that equals 0.2, which becomes 20%. So we have a note. Generally, 10% discrimination or less is unacceptable, while 15 or higher is acceptable. Now a note on assessing distractors. This is for multiple choice items. So distractors are intended to make students think. By distractors we mean the answers that are not correct in a multiple choice item. Ideally, any distractor should be picked at least once by one student, or more. But this is not written in stone. Maybe you did a wonderful job while teaching the topic, so neither you nor your test can fool your students. How to deal with production items? There isn't a clear-cut way to deal with the answers given in production items, at least on the statistical level. However, you can write answers to your production items yourself, making sure to include basic elements that would make the answers correct. Then you can assess how close or far from these ideal answers your students were. Still, this is not as simple as saying black or white. That is why it is highly advisable to include the criteria that will be used to evaluate the answers to production items on a test. And here's the reference. Once more, to get further information on evaluating tests, my recommendation is to read this chapter.